The Skull and Bones has got itself to an interesting point now. A point where you might be surprised, but I'm not all that fearful of it coming out. Don't get me wrong, this still could be an absolute disaster, and knowing Ubisoft, it probably will go that way. Yet since the newest gameplay release that we've just had, there is some actually interesting things that they're bringing out, and some things that are slightly bringing some hopes up, at least for me. For starters, this game is gorgeous, at least from the gameplay that we've been shown so far. Now, it isn't perfect well, we'll get onto that in a little bit, but look at this. The birds, the sun coming through the mast, it looks really nice. And that's not a surprise. Ubisoft tend to be able to do this pretty well with most of their games. But this shot, for example, this is gameplay, and it looks picturesque. Of course, there's no surprise that Ubisoft know how to make things look good. That's not really the point we're looking for. It's more evil ghost ships like this that are the bigger red flags. So just last week, we got the Skull and Bones gameplay deep dive trailer. This is supposedly showing us the final bit of gameplay before the early access that comes out in this December. One thing that is fantastic is they seem to have lent way more into the feedback that they've gained from, I'm assuming, a lot of the reactions to their trailers, whether it's on YouTube or reviews, but also a lot of the stuff that they've had back from their early access playtests. So this is actually the start of the game, where you get to character customize, and I really do like the way they've done this. It doesn't look like there's a ton of options, but hey-ho, we can accept what we're given, I guess. But then we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the game. The whole core of it is to start with this small saloon ship and slowly build up. You are incredibly weak, incredibly vulnerable at the start, and hopefully, slowly but surely, you can start taking on heavier and heavier enemies to eventually become, well, something a bit more powerful. So this is definite gameplay here. We can almost confirm this. And actually, we've seen some other stuff from streamers who have played in the early versions. We've got ships attacking on the side here. Whether these are multiplayer guys or AI, we don't know yet. This is a single player and an online experience, so you can do both if that's what you want to do. If I'm going to be honest, now we've kind of come to terms with accepting that this is not anything like Black Flag, and we're just getting a pirate progression simulator. I don't hate the way this is starting to look. I've made tons of negative videos, but this one is actually starting to turn me, at least to be the intrigued to see how they responded to feedback. Granted, mostly negative feedback. See, this is something that really interests me. You can see as this ship comes around, we have our crew members here. They start to duck down. I'm not sure if they know, but the ship kind of gives them away. However, this scenery going through the swamps, goddamn beautiful. But some stealth mechanics as well in the game, trying to avoid larger and bigger ships as we start off as pretty much nothing. There's an interesting concept, and I wonder if this is something that they're going to lean into, or whether this is just the start of a trailer to try and ramp up some intensity. And the ships actually look like ships this time, and not World of Tanks ships. Here we have our first look at the forts. We've seen little bits and pieces before, but we have the breaches in the front here that, can be exploited, and we have multiple ships attacking. Now, I'm going to say that these are probably player ships, mostly because they look like candy canes. And this is the one problem that I think a lot of people had, is that because you have full ship customizations, you're going to get people doing the weirdest and wacky stuff. That's not something that annoys me that much, since that's kind of just the nature of an online multiplayer game. But I would like to see some leaning into the realism side. And whilst this is an arcade game, people are here for pirates. And at least for me, this somewhat takes you out of that immersion. But then just as fast as they pull you out, they pull me back in. Look at that. So we do know that it is not just ship combat. You can actually approach different ports. This, for example, is St. Anne, where we can hop off, see men with six-packs and guys with beer bellies as well. But this is where we're going to be doing most of our trading and interacting on land. There is a little bit of walking around, but it's not really going to be anything more than one, talking to vendors or going to find and dig up some treasure on some islands. But I think that's going to be incredibly limited. We can now start to look at our pirate vessels and understand where the ship upgrading comes in. Starting off with pretty much nothing, but now at least we have our core base. Here, we can start to add different bits on, whether it's armor on the front and the side to try and make it less susceptible to enemy weapons. Speaking of weapons, we have a lot of them. I'm really glad that they're showcasing some of the cannons here, and not stuff like the firework launchers and, well, RPGs that we had in some of the other trailers. They really do know how to showcase something, because seeing whales with these beautiful ships. If this was all we were shown about Skull and Bones, I would be excited. But everything else just makes me incredibly skeptical. This is one of the most beautiful looking games that I've seen in a long time. So why, when it is actually shown by streamers or IGN, so on and so forth, it looks so much worse? And here we have some of the naval battles with, well, I guess in multiplayer fashions, where this is multiplayer ship-to-ship combat. Of course, using the weapons that you've used, you've upgraded, and the resources that you've collected, working together or working against other enemies. Yet before you get so incredibly excited, this was a YouTube short that I made back 3 months ago when we first saw our actual gameplay, because these were the expectations we were shown. And once again, in this new Ubisoft trailer, it does look like just this good. But then here's the reality of the actual gameplay. And if this is the difference that we're going to be getting in the final release, I am going to be disappointed. And I pray to God that this version that Ubisoft is showing right here is the actual final version. And they've just done a ton of changes in the last 3 months. Moving through, we get a look at some of the contracts that we can take. Kind of similar to what we saw in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, where there will be ships of varying difficulties with resources or mysteries on them. We'll have bounties that we can collect from the ports that we saw earlier, but these contracts are the ones that are going to be providing us with the most reward. They're going to have resources to sell, stuff to upgrade our ship, but the more they have, the harder it's going to be to take them down. A little bit like fighting the Man of War in Black Flag, but I'm hoping a little bit easier, because my god, that was a mission that actually gives me PTSD. As you can see though, it's not just the other ships, but there will be environmental dangers, terrifically insane stormy seas. And to be fair, fighting here does look beautiful. Here is a look at the boarding, and this is the bit that I think has triggered a lot of people, because that is it. Sending off your grappling hook and moving into a cutscene. This is going to be the most that we're going to be getting out of any sort of the boarding in Skull and Bones. Cutscenes, and I'm assuming some sort of quick time events to get it done and sorted. And this has been one of the main issues. I mean, it's the first comment. Could be a 10 out of 10 game with boarding, hand-to-hand combat, and actual exploring. Oh look, never mind. They're bringing it back. They've decided to keep harvesting resources. It just looks horrifically bad, and I don't know why they've kept that in. I understand collecting resources is a part of the game. Either find a better way of doing it, or take it out completely. Then we start to get into the more mythical stuff, which I'm assuming is taking a lot of inspiration from as Sea of Thieves, where we can go and hunt pirate ghost ships or mythical beings, whether it is sea monsters, kraken, so on and so forth. That's something that I'm not actually that against. I'm not someone that is so staunched on it being completely historically accurate. We know that that's just not how games work if we're trying to get some entertainment out of them. And having mythical beasts is kind of a lot of fun. But it's when it's taken to a level and provided in a very arcadey approach that it takes away some of the fun. Look, I would love to fight a kraken, but let me have my crew members spend ages loading the cannons, waiting, firing them at the right time. It adds intensity, it adds gameplay, and it adds so much story. People with more primitive weapons trying to take out these mythical beasts is so much more exciting than loading up a machine gun on the back of my spaceship boat and just hoping for the best. Kingpins will be a part of the game. They'll be giving you missions, and also you can start working for them. You can change your banners, and of course, you can become sort of part of a trading company in that way. It will make you a bit more of a target to people that don't have big fiery ballistas, but it means that some of the rewards that you're going to be getting from these missions are way higher than anything you can do on your own. And yes, you did just see a flamethrower on the back of a ship. My hope for this game is starting to dwindle. If I'm going to be honest, I watched 3/4 of this trailer before I started making this video, and now I feel incredibly sad again. I think I'm done describing it, guys. I actually just want to cry now. I had some hope that some bits were starting to sound good. Now, what the hell was that? However, as you start to advance through the game, you can get to a point where you're not just working for other people anymore. You can start to make your own pirate gangs. Within this, you can have a home base. People can come and trade in your areas. You can also get access to a black market, which is going to give you the illegal resources as well, whether it's smuggling sugarcane, gunpowder, so on and so forth, selling to more wealthy investors. This is where the real money is, because you can start to make a trade network of pirate ships and moving resources from one place to another. Yet, of course, with that, it does make you way more susceptible to other players, and I'm assuming AI as well, that really want to take your money. They can attack your convoys and they will sabotage your network. This is something that you just have to learn, adapt with, and evolve to be able to be strong enough to keep them at bay. I'm going to be honest, it's quite a nice touch to be able to have your own pirate networks, and I think that's the main takeaway that I have from this. There is so much potential with the Skull and Bones. Having your own small pirate ship and slowly leveling it up, finally getting upgrades to become a more powerful seaworthy opponent, upgrading your crew and maybe even having other players join that crew with you, and then going to work for other people in these huge networks and clans to eventually go on to make your own network where you can send people off to war or send people to raid forts or sink other ships. All that stuff is incredible, but it's the details that they've really missed out on. The lack of boarding, the lack of any real exploration or the freedom, an open world that is not really, because you're so confined to certain areas, not being able to just jump off wherever you want. You have cool things like side quests and missions, but they are just distractions from the limitations that the game has put in place, because they weren't able to get the full open world exploration that something like Black Flag had. Going on to some of the weapons that you can put on your boats, from flamethrowers to machine guns to firework rockets, just feel like they cheapen the game because they're so unnecessary. Having your regular cannons, upgrading them that way, is more than enough. There is so much more content that could be added where the focus doesn't have to just be on upgrading weapons in your ship. But they decided that they needed more variety, and in doing so went so fantastical it cheapened the overall experience. And I think that's where the main disappointment comes with me. This could have been something with so much potential. Having tacky resource collection, having terrible upgrade paths, and limiting an open world to a linear progression system doesn't make any sense to me. But I guess we're going to find out in February, because I will be playing the game, and I will be looking out for more information, because I do want this to do well. But I don't think it will, because I think Ubisoft have completely missed the mark with Skull and Bones.